Welcome to Wrestling History X, where three friends come together to talk about the stories behind the matches. I'm Matt.
I'm Michael.
I'm Shane.
And this is a house show.
Welcome to the house show.
Yeah, we do use that joke.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, that's a joke I've had to use before.
We haven't done one of these in a while.
In your house show.
There you go. That's nice. I don't think we've done a house show since we've started watching In Your House. So this is in.
No, I don't think so.
No, I think our last house show we did was after we went and watched SmackDown.
Yeah, it was the SmackDown episode. Yep, that's right.
We were like, oh, cool commercial.
Yeah.
Which one? There's lots of them.
The whole damn thing.
But this is just basically a unedited
Chat.
Right, just us.
About
us talking about
wrestling.
Different things that we want to talk about. And one of the things we kind of wanted to talk about was the new regime.
That's right.
Of WWE. Excited?
The era of Hunter.
Yeah, because it seemed it's like, oh, well, they took NXT away from Triple H. And then after, of course, he also had a health scare. Glad he's okay.
Absolutely.
And then it seemed like it's like, oh, well, it's just never going to happen. The whole narrative that fans have built up for years is that, well, at some point, Vince is not going to be running this show.
I think we all thought he would die before he retired.
Yeah.
Exactly. We all thought he would die before he retired.
Yep.
I mean, we weren't.
I figured somebody would find him in his office, 4 o'clock in the morning or something.
Well, that's when he works out.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah,
Perfect
so
time.
it's just like, okay, well, of course, no ill will towards towards anybody's health, but it was like, oh, well, maybe at some point the show will be watchable or entertaining, as opposed to just, it's like, oh, well, I'll watch WrestleMania. Maybe I'll put on like the Rumble or one of the bigger pay-per-views if I'm at home, but like there's nothing to sink your teeth into. And the idea being that NXT at one point was very entertaining. Had great pay-per-views.
Yeah, at one point, NXT was the best wrestling on TV.
And Triple H got it pulled out from his control. And basically all of the stars that he helped cultivate have been canned or jumped ship to AEW. And what will this be? It's intriguing.
Yeah, it's a whole new world of wrestling. I mean, we've gone through it in the past where you had your big stars who had either retired or moved to different organizations, and you had the WWF WCW war that started, but it was still. Yeah, you had Eric Bischoff that was leading the charge on the WCW side, where he was giving us stuff that we hadn't seen before just because he was relatively new at the time. But for the last 20 years-ish, we've been watching basically the same product again and again and again and again. And now it finally seems like we're going to get that fresh start that we've been anticipating and hoping for because of the acts of a perverted, horny old man, and B, because of the fresh vision coming from somebody who has been a product of a product of the business, a master of the game. He has a mind for the wrestling world as a whole, whether it comes to character development, planning a match, booking a match, from start to finish. It's more than just coming up with an idea, ripping up a script, and then going with whatever shit you can pull out of your ass. There seems to be more thought that's actually sprinkled into the show.
Yeah, I mean, he is a guy whose his whole career essentially has been in the WWF. Like, his time in WCW was so small that it's like, he knows how this works, but he also probably has more respect for wrestling outside of the out of the tower. And
they've literally said wrestling.
Yes.
On TV.
Wrestling and wrestler.
the last few weeks.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you guys about, because I haven't kept up with it a whole bunch, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to just start watching it right now. I'll wait,
No,
I
haven't been watching it either.
Yeah.
I've been Twitter watching that kind of thing, highlights type stuff. So I was
going to ask,
kind of get an idea of what's going on.
What changes that are significant outside of what you just pointed out, that they are saying wrestler instead of superstar.
I mean, I can point out a few that
you've heard,
that I've heard and have excited me. I mean, one,
they're poignant.
They're bringing certain people back, and like a Karrion Kross, who was in NXT, was a top dog.
Yeah.
Like, he immediately came in and was a contender, and then they called him up to Raw, gave him a stupid mask, and buried him before releasing him.
Yeah,
and literally he shows up on SmackDown like 2 weeks ago,
2 weeks, 3 weeks, something
like that, and literally he got his NXT entrance back.
He got
Scarlett's there with him. So it's this cool thing, and literally they come out, they beat up Drew McIntyre, they stick the time clock, the sands of time, in the ring, basically telling Roman, your time's almost up. Instant contender. How hard was that to do?
It wasn't hard at all. We've already done everything we could to make Drew look like an idiot. What's one more thing?
They did.
I'm just kidding, of course.
Drew McIntyre. Has anyone noticed that he's missing something?
The sword.
Yeah, he doesn't have the sword anymore. I mean, it was because it was Vince McMahon's sword, personal sword, and they were like,
was it?
We're not going to take him on the road anymore.
His family sword.
But guess what? That sword was a dumb prop.
Yep.
Because he couldn't do anything with the sword.
Yeah, he could cut a rope, and that was about it.
It's like outside of that, it's attempted murder if he were to swing it at
somebody. I mean, it's literally, it was like a elongated version of the eye for eye match. Like, we know you can't actually do this, so what are we doing?
Yeah.
I forgot about the eye for an eye match.
Was it so the whole Dexter Loomis thing?
Yes.
This last week, they show a car crash in the back. I believe there was somebody beaten up.
Yeah.
At some point, when Dexter actually comes out to ringside, like, he's in the crowd, and it looks like he's trying to jump the ring, the guardrail, basically. The camera is on the other side, and AJ Styles is standing in the ring, so you cannot see who it is. So it literally feels like
it's not supposed to be happening.
It's not supposed to be happening, and it's just a fan trying to jump in the ring. It does not get released that it is Dexter Loomis until on the internet.
People point
after
out.
the show.
After the show.
And it was just all these small little Easter eggs that, if you're paying attention, it makes sense. I think there was an Easter egg for Bray Wyatt, I think, this week on Raw.
I don't know if it's been confirmed for Bray. I think it was possibly another Dexter.
It might be.
Because there was one where they were doing something and you could see a hand opening a door, or coming through a door in the background that had, a black glove or something. And then later on in the night, when Dexter made his appearance again, it was the same black shirt.
But it's literally small little things. Like, obviously, 3 hours of Raw is still a lot.
Yep.
And you're not going to be able...
You're not going to overhaul it immediately.
No.
I mean, even when NXT was 1 hour, I literally said, this is the best hour of wrestling you're going to get on TV. And when it went to 2 hours, it was like, oh, we have to do 2 hours of TV every week. And we basically have to write it every week. Like, it becomes difficult.
Yep.
I mean, writing 5 hours of TV for Raw and SmackDown is difficult. Because when
a lot of things to juggle.
When NXT was really, really good, they literally were writing 4 hours of TV a month. And they were doing it all at one time and then going and filming it. And then they had another month to figure out what to do next.
It was also television wrestling that builds to a quarterly pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Which I would love for that to be the way that wrestling works, but it's not
WWE
real.
is never going to go back to...
No.
Never going to do that. But they also... And I think one of the biggest things, just for they're not doing rematches every single week. That was the thing. Like, literally, they were like, okay, Cody and Seth Rollins are in a feud. They literally faced off against each other every week on TV, and then they wanted us to care about the pay-per-view. That's just an example. I don't really remember. Like I said, I don't watch the show
regularly
every week, but I know that is a lot of people's opinions on the shows, is that, like, quit giving us rematches.
Yeah.
Like, you can have people in feuds and they don't have to wrestle every week.
Yeah. You've got all of these people on your roster, so it's okay to have them mix it up.
And also, it's like they don't need to wrestle every week anyway, because there's barely any wrestling on the show, and it feels like they're not taking advantage of the time where there's not wrestling, and then the wrestling.
I think they've also taken, like, when we did our last house show, the SmackDown, and we were like, one person came out to the ring, and then they literally stood there for like 15 minutes waiting through a commercial break.
Yeah,
17 promos, then the other person coming out, then another commercial, then another 15 It was like 20 minutes between the first person coming out and the second person coming out, and then they had a 3-minute match. They are not doing that anymore.
Oh, nice.
You're having real matches.
Wrestlers are not coming out before a commercial.
They're both coming out and having a match.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they're putting the focus back on storytelling, and not just storytelling, but building the actual story itself. You've got, using Raw as an example, you've got a 3-hour show. They'll give you a little snip of something in the first hour, and then they'll touch back on it on the middle hour, and then you get the culmination of it at the end. So it's not just let's grab and see what sticks. We're actually putting some thought into it instead of just building it around one guy.
Yeah, I mean, consistency is helpful, which it seems like they've started an idea and abandoned it, and started an idea and abandoned it. It's like, oh, well, the idea wasn't good, but, like, even if it's not good, if you follow it through, it still ends up being more meaningful.
And apparently it's supposed to, continue on with, them getting a little more relaxed on the promos. Instead of making it scripted word for word, they're gonna go old school where they give them little bullet points and let them build their own, actually be their character instead of trying to act like their character.
Promo as opposed to everybody's a bad promo.
Yeah, I mean,
essentially
using Bayley as an example. I mean, her coming back was great because she'd been gone for too long. They brought her back. They immediately had her build a faction with Dakota Kai and what are they called?
Sky.
Yes.
Sky. Yeah, that was the thing that I did see, because
you have to yell it because it's in capital letters.
Okay. I watched a little bit I watched the Becky Bianca match live on SummerSlam, and that match was great. But at the end, when Bayley came out with Dakota Kai and Io Sky, I was like, oh, cool! Like, two people that are from NXT that people like and think are good wrestlers, with Bayley, who
is a good wrestler,
yep. And has been gone for a while, comes back, and she's got two people, and the three of them look great together, and it's like, oh, that's nice. That felt fresh. I didn't watch the rest of SummerSlam. I was like, oh, well, this Becky Bianca match was really great. I don't know that anything is going to beat that, so I'll just move on. I'm going to do some laundry. But I was impressed with that match, which, of course has great potential considering the two, but the Bayley standing strong with Dakota and Io next to her, I was like, oh, that was the first time I was like, this feels like right and a little like something that might not have happened.
Yeah, like too good to be true.
Yeah.
Talking to one of the guys that works for me, he is a wrestling fan, and we're always picking each other's brains for stuff, and every time he asks me something, I have to remind myself that I can't think about how it used to be because
it hasn't been.
It's not the same brain that's thinking everything. So the future is unknown right now because we don't have Vince McMahon giving us the same stuff that we've seen all these years, which is great.
But maybe arguably it keeps getting like a more like pasteurized version of it in a negative way. It's just like cleaner and cleaner and less sensical somehow.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, we're boiling it down to like this like slick product, but it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, but we're using spoiled milk, and it's like, all right, well, shit, like that's no good.
We're getting the wow factor back that's been missing for so long because it's just been the same thing recycled again and again, which is exciting because wrestling hasn't been exciting. I mean, hell, wrestling hasn't been wrestling in a long time. So,
I mean, I am generally more excited today than I have been since probably when I got back into wrestling.
Yeah,
I was watching. I started watching WWE a little bit,
Stuff's
and I was
fresh
just kind of like,
Yeah.
and I was like, this isn't for me. I literally haven't watched Raw and SmackDown on a regular basis in forever.
I mean, when I started to get back into it, I was eating all of it up and sampling basically a little bit of everything to the point where, like, at one point, to the point where things run their course and I honed in on what I liked and now I just watch that. Doesn't mean I'm not interested in the other things. I like to hear about it, but I'm not like, I'm not...
You're not bought in?
I'm not eating it up like with a spoon like I was, where I was like watching episodes of Impact and even what was the Lucha Underground? Yeah, watching Lucha Underground and watching NXT and like tuning into Raw or SmackDown and watching New Japan and I was like, oh, like pretty quickly realized what I enjoyed, and now I just watch New Japan. I tune into AEW occasionally, and I watch their pay-per-views, and then I watch the WWF. Like, it's like I'm gonna watch WrestleMania. I have Peacock because I need the network so we can do this show, so I can watch these old things. And the bonus is like, well, I can also watch Alf. And WrestleMania is there for free. Not free, but, WrestleMania is there to stream when WrestleMania happens.
You can get all those premium live events.
I can do my laundry on a Saturday and be like, oh, SummerSlam's today, and turn on SummerSlam, and then maybe I'm lucky enough to see a match as good as Becky Lynch and Bianca. I'd be like, all right.
Well, speaking of matches that are as good, if not better, I mean, let's kind of transition. G1 Climax just finished a few days ago.
My favorite time of the year is much as it wears you down. And I'm so glad that it's over. And I'm already ready for the next one at the same time. Where it's like, it's going to be a year. I'm going to be so excited. But it is a lot of wrestling in a short period of time.
It is.
And this year
they did 20 days.
Yes.
Which most shows were only like 4 to 5 matches. There was a couple that had like full 8 match. Was it just 1 or was it 2?
I think it was 1, and then maybe and then they had some shows they sprinkled in like 5 match shows, so they could have like 1 that was a full 8. But but it was 4 blocks and 6-man blocks, and there was some fresh faces and
lots of fresh faces.
Yeah,
which was great.
Yeah, and you get 2 finals as well, and it was really great. And they didn't. It might have been 4 singles matches for each night of the tour for the most part, but none of them were extended, and they only have 30-minute time limits.
Stayed past its welcome.
True. Yeah. Even Yano got more interesting than he has been in years.
It's true. So basically, in New Japan here in the recent past, they had just it felt like every match was 5 to 7 minutes longer than it really needed to be, just because they didn't have the number of people to work, and so
Yeah.
so they just had to and to fill out a full 3-hour show, they basically had to have matches go longer.
And also, yeah, this is the best G1 since the 2019 G1 probably, which was fucking incredible. It was great, but pandemic.
Yeah.
And then, obviously that's lightening up, but there's also fresher faces and more blocks. So at the very least, we got 2 semifinals. It's like, oh, that's great. Those aren't going to be wasted.
But I don't remember. I'm sure probably the semifinals and the final probably went close to 30, if not longer.
I think,
but
yeah.
I don't remember a match being over 25 minutes the entire tournament. I'm not fully caught up.
Yeah, I finished it.
I'm usually always about a week behind on everything, just because.
Yeah, Matt's also not is afraid of spoilers. Where for me, I stayed up way too late because I was a little bit behind, and I was like, I can't have the final ruined for me. I can't have the semifinal ruined for me. So I stayed up to 3 catching up with everything, and it was well worth it.
It's the journey, not the destination.
It is a journey.
I didn't get to watch any of it.
I mean, there's.
But from what I've read up on it, it sounds like there's some killer matches. So.
And honestly, what most people assumed would be the winner was not the winner.
Correct.
And they built it up in a way where everybody assumed, it'll be Naito. Naito loses his first 2 matches, and you're like, oh, well, now it has to be Naito.
It always feels like they give whoever's going to win in the end. They start him off not good,
underdog.
So it makes him the underdog, and he's gonna prevail in the end.
Oh, yeah, and Naito's always the underdog anyway. So it's he lost his first 2 matches. Now it's in the bank. He makes it, loses the semifinal to Will Ospreay in an incredible match. Will Ospreay goes on to have a match with Kazuchika Okada, and I was like, oh fuck, could Will win this? Will's had 7 matches with Okada. Okada at one point was kind of his, big brother.
Yeah, his mentor, basically.
And the only time he did beat Okada, he did it with interference, with help.
Yep.
And Will is, a lot of people think, one of the best wrestlers working at the moment. I would agree.
Top 5.
I would agree. And as the match was going, he starts. It's he's been watching tape, and he starts pulling out finishers from past people who have beat Okada in the G1 final.
Smart.
He lands a Styles Clash.
That's awesome.
He does a fucking, the V trigger. He's doing moves from other people. He's watched the tape. But at the end of the day, he can't pull it out because he didn't beat him on his own terms. And it's wonderful storytelling. And as he was doing those moves, I was like, fuck. Oh, no, you can't beat him with stuff that he's seen before. You got to beat him with your move set. You have to be the better man. You can't be using other people's moves for that. And then, of course, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's also the 50th anniversary of New Japan Pro Wrestling, where Okada is coming out wearing Inoki-esque robes. Okada's winning the G1. But it only adds to, when Will Ospreay beats Okada clean, holy shit.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It could happen in 6 months, or it could happen in a year and a half or 2 years. But when it happens, we have
let's book it for Dominion next year, or Wrestle Kingdom 2024.
You have 4 or 5 years of storytelling all in the ring.
Yeah.
To build up to that. And I kind of started to get chills when I was explaining that Ospreay story. So it's that's what the G1 can do. And then, of course, there's tons of other great matches throughout that tournament, and some stuff that was surprising. David Finlay. Who would have thought great. David Finlay would have done so well?
I think Jonah showed out.
He did.
I think he showed up on a worldwide stage. He's been in NXT, he's been in Impact, but now Japan knows Jonah.
And to point out, Will Ospreay being a top 5 wrestler working today, Jonah pinned Okada clean.
Yep.
He did not rack up a whole bunch of points, but he pinned Okada clean in the middle of the ring, something that Will Ospreay hasn't done. So New Japan is building a Vader with Jonah.
Yep.
Like, they're obviously behind him if they're going to let that happen. So it's pretty exciting to see.
Remind me, who was he in NXT?
He was Jonah.
Was he just Jonah? Okay.
Yeah. He was like the big dude that like did top rope splashes and stuff.
Yeah, is he?
Like
he won the North
American
American title at one point, right before he lost it right before they switched to 2.0.
Yeah,
that's right. I was thinking he had a different name in NXT for some reason.
But big shout out to David Finlay and of course ELP, who had a series of great matches, and I'm excited to see him continue into the heavyweight division of New Japan.
And we're going to transition one more time.
All right.
Quick moment, just because kind of tie it. Little AEW. So it was announced that I guess it hasn't been announced, but Dave Meltzer has said that AEW is going to have a presence at Wrestle Kingdom. And there just so happens that Will Ospreay and a couple of his United Empire buddies are in the Trios tournament. And if they win their first match, their second match would be against a little group called the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega.
Yes, and Will Ospreay has recently cut a hefty promo on...
Will and Kenny are cutting promos on Twitter against each other.
Yeah.
And
it's a hot match.
I would definitely say that if AEW is going to be involved with Wrestle Kingdom, that is a match that would put butts in seats.
And that is a perfect way to... It's like, oh yeah, like Kenny Okada, it's like, what is the second best option? Ospreay and Kenny, which honestly is tastier at this point in time than Okada Omega.
I mean, I think we all still want to see Okada Omega for...
We do.
Five.
Yeah, but we absolutely do. But like, as far as like things in between, like it's the best possible scenario.
But also AEW headed towards All Out.
Yeah.
Coming up at the beginning of September. It was looking like it's going to be CM Punk versus Jon Moxley. But now they're putting that match on Dynamite this very week.
Which is crazy.
And so kind of everyone's like...
Well, what are we going to do?
What exactly are we doing?
At All Out. We're not going to run it back at All Out.
MJF going to run out and make it a three-way? Just make them have to have a rematch at All Out? I mean, I'm literally on the edge of my seat waiting for Wednesday to
find out what's going to happen.
I will legitimately tune in Wednesday. Like, I watch Dynamite off and on, depending on if there's something that I am well aware of and interested in. But it's like, oh, well, yeah. I mean, Punk's back, and he's having a match with Moxley. And right before a pay-per-view. So what's the angle?
And then,
I need to know what the angle is.
And then Hangman's just
there.
To use a horrible pun, but he's just hanging out. And
he's
because everyone thought he was going to be the Young Bucks partner in the Trios tournament, and then Omega shows up. So now Hangman's just kind of... And then him and Punk had a little bit of a thing on this past Dynamite. So it's like, well, maybe he'll get involved. So who knows?
Who knows?
And then, of course, it's always fun that because Paige and Punk actually have some real-life heat over personnel decisions that Punk has wanted and not happy about. So,
oh, divas!
See, I'm interested in the trios thing as well. I'm interested to see Aussie Open working.
Aussie
AEW.
Open has every time I see them, I'm just like, oh my gosh, these guys are so good, and I just I'm ready to see that Aussie Open FTR match.
That's what I'm looking for most.
If FTR keeps the New Japan, the IWGP tag team belts until Wrestle Kingdom, I think that's the match that they have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, Aussie Open, I feel like that they were starting to make a buzz, and then the pandemic happened, and now that they can
Well, right
get
before
out,
the pandemic, one of them got hurt.
Yeah, that's true. He did.
Who all are in Aussie Open?
It's Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher. They're two Australian guys that like.
They're just Australian tag team now.
They had started wrestling in Rev Pro, and started getting over, and people were really loving them.
They worked a little bit of New Japan.
They had worked a little bit of New Japan, and it was about to be tag league.
Yeah.
And one of them got hurt.
And the pandemic happened
in 2019, and then once he got healthy, pandemic hit, and then they basically have just been hanging out in lockdown. So we haven't seen a whole lot of them until they finally joined up with.
But of the tag teams that you want to see, it's like, Briscoes, FTR, we just did that incredible shit. Aussie Open is really the next one anybody, I mean, I say anybody, but that I want to see.
Yeah.
Unless the Young Bucks are willing to lay down for them, which I would really prefer for them to do.
They laid down for them last time they fought.
Yeah. But I feel like the Young Bucks are.
But they're both faces. They're both faces now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I feel like they're
Because Young Bucks just turned.
Yeah,
that's right.
Undisputed Elite turned on them. So we're gonna get that match at some point.
Absolutely.
Once Cole and Riley and Fish are all healthy.
Did you guys watch Briscoe's FTR 1 and 2?
No,
I've seen both of them.
Shame.
I've seen clips, but I haven't got to watch the whole.
2 or 3 falls, incredible, but that first match, maybe match.
I think the first match is probably the better one, just because it surprised me so much how good it was going to be.
Yeah.
Or how good it was. The second one went in with expectations.
It was incredible,
and they matched them. Don't get me wrong.
They didn't exceed them.
No.
But they're 2 of the best matches of the year easily.
I mean, right now, like, if it wasn't for Ospreay and Moxley doing as well as they've been doing all year long, Dax Harwood is in my top 5 for Wrestler of the Year.
Yep.
If not top 3.
I mean, he's
he's
earned it.
Literally every time he wrestles a match this year, I'm just like, oh my god, this dude. Like, I've always liked FTR.
But now they're getting the love and they're feeding off of it in such a way that, like, the Young Bucks always are good at being the Young Bucks, but FTR is legitimately on a high from the fans that, like, you don't see other people absorb and, like, work harder for. I mean, you see it, but it's just like they are really absorbing it and putting it out, like, twofold.
Yeah. I mean,
twofold at the least.
They basically fanboy their, not necessarily their matches, but their opponents in their matches. I mean, they give them the utmost respect and take them to the limit.
They know how to put together a goddamn tag match.
Yeah.
They're not.
No frills,
it's not a mess, because sometimes these tag matches just turn into, like, ECW without the, like, blood, where it's like, what about the rules? What about the rules? But but FTR is very respectful of what tag team wrestling is, and that adds to. Granted, they're also incredible, but, like, that adds to them being a great tag team. Because, like, you can just do the stuff, but if you do it within the confines of what it is, intelligently, then it's automatically, lifts the whole thing up.
Absolutely. I mean, we covered a lot.
Yeah,
we kind of went around the world and current events of wrestling right there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we could say that Stardom is actually going to start working with New Japan.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's happening.
I can't remember. It's Julia and one other person from Stardom. They, at the final of the G1, they both were in the ring and respectively handed flowers before the match started, like bouquets to Ospreay and Okada, kind of as a, like, hey, like, we're going to start working with Stardom. This is a nice way to introduce them. It's like, have them show up, do something nice for the 2 guys that are in the biggest tournament and one of the most prestigious tournaments and long-running tournaments in wrestling. So
That's
that'll
very
be
cool.
that'll be fun to see.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us and listening to our ranting and raving
Yeah.
about all these fun topics that we all love. I mean, this is the reason why we
Yeah.
love wrestling.
If you listen to the normal shows where we cover older pay-per-views and TV shows, and we go chronologically through wrestling, you'll hear us make jokes or references to things that are happening currently. So here's, a long form
Yes.
talk about some of the stuff that
Oftentimes
we might be
we
jabbing at.
don't say positive things about the stuff that's happening in wrestling today, and it's very refreshing and reassuring and exciting that
This was all
we have
net
so much to
positive.
look forward to.
Yeah, all net positive comments.
Yep. I mean, I'm excited thinking of the fact that, going back to Triple H running the show in WWE now, that we might get some of the classic good King of the Ring tournaments again, or
That'd be wonderful.
get some sort of main roster version of the Mae Young or the Dusty
Yeah,
tag
that's a really good
tournament.
point.
We
Give me a wrestling classic.
get something.
Get rid of Extreme Rules. Give me a wrestling classic.
Yes.
One night tournament.
Well, if you like this show or any of our other ones, please go out there and rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts at. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, any other topics that you would like for us to discuss.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually were inspired to do this because we did have someone reach out and want us to do a house
Yes.
show. So we're trying to be better about them. We
Yeah.
promise we are.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes we finish recording late at night and we're just like, we don't have it in us.
Yeah.
We want to do more of these. We really do. But you can email us at wrestlinghistoryx@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at wrestlinghistox. That's wrestling HISTOX. We'll see you real soon.
Laters.